B, C, and D. The duration for each activity is assigned beside it. For example, the duration of A is 3 days, B 7 days, C 1 day, D 3 days. The predecessor for each activity also is assigned beside the activity. We said that predecessor is the activity that should have started and completed before the start of this activity. For example, activity A has no predecessor. This means that this activity starts with the start of the project. Activity B, the predecessor of B is A. This means that A should have started and completed before B starts. The predecessor of C is A, and the predecessor of D is B and C. This means that B and C both should have been completed before the start of D. Now, we have to use the critical path method in order to calculate the yearly start schedule, and we have to calculate also the latest start schedule. The yearly start schedule for each activity, we calculate the yearly start and the yearly finish. For example, in order to calculate the yearly start schedule, the best way is to first draw the network model. We said that the network model shows the dependency between the activities. Who is the predecessor for what? Okay, let us start with the activity A. A, we said that it is the first activity in the project because it has no predecessors. Then A, we can draw the activity A. Then we have the activity B. A is the predecessor for B, then we have to draw an arrow from A to B. This means that A is predecessor to B, or A should start and complete before the start of B. Then we have another activity, which is C. A is also a predecessor for C. Then we have to draw an arrow between A, or from A to C. Then we have the activity D. D has two predecessors, B and C. Then we shall draw two arrows from B and C to D. This means that both B and C should have been completed before the start of D. Okay, then we have for each activity to determine the yearly start and yearly finish for each activity. We have to start with A. A is the first activity of the project because it has no predecessor. Then, what is the earliest time the activity A can start at? With the start of the project, this means at time 0. Okay, then we have to ask ourselves a question. If A started at time 0, at what time shall activity A finish? Notice that the duration of A is 3. This means that the yearly finish of the activity A is 0 plus 3, which is 3. Then we have the activity B. The predecessor of B is A. What is the earliest start of B? The earliest start of B will be when A finish, as soon as A finishes. Okay, this means at time 3. Also, activity C, the earliest time it could start with is the yearly finish of A, which is 3. So, if B started at time 3, B, when will be finished? The duration of B is 7. This means that B will finish after 3 plus 7, which means 10. Similarly, C starts at time 3. If C starts at time 3, then it will finish at 3 plus the duration of C, which is 1, which is 4. Now, we have to calculate the early start of D. D has two predecessors, B and C. Both B and C should have been completed before the start of the activity D. If we started at time 4, B will not have been finished. We have both. We shall have both B and C be finished. So we have to take the maximum between the early finish of the two predecessors B and C, which is the maximum between 10 and 4. The maximum between 10 and 4 is 10. Then the earliest time D can start with is at time 10. At time 10, we can assure that B and C, both of them have finished, and it is the earliest time. Then, if D started at time 10, then D will finish after 3 days. This means 10 plus 3, which is 13. This 13 is called project duration, or we can call it the early finish project completion time, which is the earliest time that the project can be completed. The earliest time that the project can be completed. Then we have to copy the early start and the early finish for each activity in our early start schedule. The early start of this is the early start and this is the early finish. The early start of A is 0, the early finish is 3. The early start of B is 3, the early finish is 10. The early start of C is 3, the early finish is 4. The early start of D is 10, the early finish is 13. Here is the early start schedule. For each activity, we calculate the earliest it can be executed. Then, now we have to calculate the late start schedule. When we calculate the late start schedule, we also need to draw the network model. So we have the activity A and B predecessor for A, and activity C, and C is a predecessor, and A is a predecessor for C, and we also have D, and B and D and C are also predecessors for D. When we calculate the late start schedule, we calculate how much we can delay each activity without affecting the project duration, without delaying the project. In order to calculate the late start schedule, we calculate the late start and the late finish in reverse. In other words, we have to start with the project duration. We start from the last activity of the project. The last activity of the project is D. D finishes according to the early schedule. The project duration is 13. So we ask ourselves the question like this: if D has finished at time 13, when D shall have started? The duration of D is 3. Then the late start of D will be 13 minus the duration of D minus 3, which is 10. Then we ask ourselves, if D started at time 10, B, the predecessor of D, when it shall have been completed? At time 10, directly before D starts. It is also the same for activity C. The late start for C is 10. Then, if B finishes at time 10, when B should have started? The duration of B is 7. Then B should have started at 10 minus 7, which is 3. Then for C, if C finished at time 10, when C should have started, 10 minus the duration of C, which is 1, should have started at time 9. Okay, now for A, when A should have been completed, given that its followers, which is B and C, B start at time 3 and C start at time C. When A should have been completed. Okay, when we calculate the late start schedule, in this situation, we have to take the minimum between the late start of B and C. In other words, we have to take the minimum between 3 and 9, which is 3. Okay. If we choose 9, if we choose, for example, by mistake, if we said that A start at time, finish at time 9, how A shall finish at time 9 and B, which is the direct follower for A start at time 3? It is not correct. Then, in order to make sure that the activity A finishes before both B and C started, then we have to take the minimum between the late start of both B and C, which is 3. If A finishes at time 3, then A should have started at time 3 minus 3, which is the duration of A, which is at time 0. Okay, this is the late start schedule. Now we have to copy the late start and the late finish for each activity in the late start schedule. The late start for activity A is 0, the late finish is 3. For B, 3, 10. This is the late start and this is the late finish. For activity C, 9 and 10. For activity D, 10 and 13. This is the late start schedule. For each activity, we calculate how much we can delay the activity without affecting the project duration, without causing a project delay. Then we have to calculate the slack. What is the slack? The slack is the spare time. It can be calculated by subtracting the early finish from the last finish, like this, or the late start minus the early start. Okay, for example, the slack for activity A is 3 minus 3 or 0 minus 0, the same value. Okay, since the duration is the same. Okay, this will result in 0. Then for activity B, 10 minus 10 or 3 minus 3, which result in 0. Then for activity C, 10 minus 4 or 9 minus 3, which is 6. Then for activity D, 13 minus 13 or 10 minus 10, which is 0. What does a value of the slack of 0 means? An activity with a slack value of 0 means that this activity is a critical activity, and this is a critical activity, and this is a critical activity. What do we mean by a critical activity? A critical activity is an activity that has no slack, or has a slack of 0, or has no spare time. How? This means that for any reason, if one of these activities, the critical activities, have some delay, it will cause project delay beyond the project duration. because they are critical. They have no slack. They have no spare time. Any delay will cause total project delay. What do we mean by a slack of 6, for example, for activity C? A slack of 6 for activity C means that C has a spare time of 6 days. If C, for any reason, uses or spends that 6 days or the 6 spare time, then it will return back to become critical. But as long as the six days or the six slack slots of time are not exhausted, then it is not critical, or it is called non-critical activity. The non-critical activities are the activities which has a spare time. For example, for any reason, or if this activity delay for any reason, this will not cause a project delay as long as the duration of the slack is not exceeded. If it is exceeded, it will return back to be critical, since any delay after the slack will cause project delay. Now we have to assign the critical activities on the yearly schedule. Then we have A has a slack of 0, then A is a critical, and B is a critical because it has a slack of 0, and D is a critical activity because it has a slack of 0. Then we have to find what is called the critical path. What is the critical path? The critical path is the sequence of critical activities from the start of the project, here from time 0. Okay, sorry, we have to calculate it or to assign it on the early start schedule. From the start of the project, which is at time 0, till the end of the project, which is at time 13 here. Sequence of activities. This means that A, then B, then C is a critical path, because A is activity starts with the project, and C finishes with the finish of the project, and they are a sequence or a series of activities, and the total slack time on all activities on the path is 0. The slack of A is 0, the slack of B is 0, and the slack of C is 0. Okay, when we contract with a company, there will be what we called a deadline. Which is the schedule requirements. Okay, then if the project duration, which we calculated here, which is the 13, if it was more than the deadline, what does this mean? If the project duration is more than the deadline or exceeded the deadline. Yani, for example, if we calculated the project duration using the critical path method and it resulted in 13, and the deadline according to the statement of work was 10, for example. According to the critical path method, we cannot complete the project before 13. It is the earliest the project can be completed. This means that if the deadline was before the duration, this means that we are failing to meet the deadline, which is a form of project failure. Then if we were estimating or planning and we found that the earliest the project can be completed is after the deadline, this means that the project will fail, and the project should not have been started from the start. Should have finished before it starts. Okay, then if the deadline if the deadline was more than the calculated duration of the project according to the critical path method. What does this mean? If the deadline, in other words, if we calculated the project duration was 13 and the deadline according to the statement of work was 15, what does this mean? This means that for each activity in the project, we have a spare time of two. Each activity can be delayed for two units or two units of time. Okay. Then, if one of the activities used this slot of time, then all activities should return to become critical activities. Then, if the deadline is greater than the project duration, this means that we do not have any critical activity. Why? Because each activity will have a slack, and there is no critical activity, and thus there will be no critical path, as there is no critical activities. But if one of these activities, of the project activities, exhausted this slack, or the whole amount of the slack, all the other activities, or many activities, will become critical, and any other delay will cause a project delay. Then, if the deadline was equal to the calculated project duration, this means that at least there is one critical path in the project. Okay. Now we can draw what is known with a Gantt chart. I think that it is a common term for you. Okay. In the Gantt chart, the Gantt chart shows the relationship between the activities and the time. Okay, so we put the activities on one axis, so we have A, B, C, and D, and we put the time on the other axis. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Okay. According on the Gantt chart, we assign the yearly schedule. Okay. For example, for activity A extends from time 0 to 3. This means that A executes at day 1, day 2, and day 3. For activity B extends from time 3 to 10. This means after 3, this, then 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Then for activity C extends from time 3 to 4, which means at day 4. Then for D extends from 10 to 13. This means day 11, 12, and 13. This is the Gantt chart for the yearly schedule for this project. As you can see, it shows the relationship between the activities, or it shows the activities during time. But as you can see, the relationship between the activities is not clear from the Gantt chart. The dependencies between the activities, or who is the predecessor to what, is not clear from the Gantt chart. The relationship, or the dependency relationship, can be extracted from the yearly start schedule using the network model. The network model is used to display the dependency or the relationship between activities, while the Gantt chart show only how the activities behave during a time. This is an example on the critical path method. Simple example. Here is the definition of the late start schedule. We said that it is calculated in reverse, and it is the latest an activity can be scheduled without delaying project completion time. Here is the definition of the slack and the critical activities as we have explained. And here is the difference between the Gantt chart and the network model. Now we want to talk about the basic skills and responsibilities for a project manager. Who is a project manager? A project manager is the person who is responsible for all the activities in the software project, and he is the responsible for the successful completion for the software of the software project. Thus, the project manager is the person who takes the overall responsibilities to manage the software project and plays an important role in the successful completion of a software project. In order to carry on his responsibilities, the project manager has to have several skills and roles or responsibilities. The first role of the project manager or responsibility or skill that he should have is he has to have the skills on how to manage the people. Who are the people we are talking about? The team members who have the power over them. The people are the most important building block in any software project. Why? Because the project result depends on the people. How? Because the successful or the failure of the software project depends on the people. Okay. The other building blocks like the process, the tools, the measurements, they are all important, but not as much as the people. Why? Because if you have good process and you have used all the required tool and you have collected all the measurements and planned for it and store for it, but if you have poor people, then those people will not know how to use or how to leverage the other resources or the other aspects of the software project, which mainly will lead to a project failure. But if we have a good team members or a good people, then the other aspects like the tools and the process and the measurements, they increases the probability of success of the software project. But the major output of the software process, which is the success or the failure of the software process, depend mainly on the team members or the people of the project. Because of that, it is of utmost important for a project manager to manage the people. The first responsibility for the project manager is to convert the group of team members, convert the group of people into a team. Before starting the project, the people the project manager select for the project, they have a different vision for the project, different objectives from the project, different aims, different goals. The role of the project manager is to unify as much as he can the vision, the directions, the aims, the goals for all the team members towards the project. This conversion result in converting the group of people into team which has an approximately similar directions and objectives and vision to the project manager. If the project manager successfully could converted a group of people into a team, this will lead to team cohesion. What do we mean by team cohesion? Team cohesion means the degree that the team can react or behave as a single unit, uniformly as a single unit. The team cohesion affects how the team member react to either external events, internal events, or the challenges that meet the software project. Okay, so the team cohesion is a very important for the software project. Also, the project manager need to avoid micromanagement. What do we mean by micromanagement? The project manager should gain information about the project, how it proceeds, the progress, should gain information, but the project manager should not focus on every detail of the project. The project manager should not over-direct team members. The project manager should not force each team member to do their tasks as he would do them. You have to have your task completed, but you are not required to ask your people to do their task as you would do them. If you so, you actually micromanage your team member. Okay. Also, you have to use your knowledge, not your position of power. You as a project manager, you have a power over your team, but you have to show you have to be an authority, but not an authority figure. You have to sometimes give direction, but you have not to dictate people. You have to balance between authority and respect. Also, you can give the direction to your team member as decisions that come from the consequences of your software project. If we said that we have delay, so we have to work overtime 2 hours daily. If we did not work these 2 hours, this will lead to a delay of 1 month, and we will pay another cost, more cost, etc. Then you have to explain the consequences of your decision so that every team member know why you have taken this direction, or why you have taken this decision. So the resistance of the team members towards your directions or towards your decisions will be reduced, because they know why you have did this. So you have to use your knowledge, not your position of power. Also, you have an authority over them, but you have to show your respect before your authority. Also, as a project manager, you have to make professional development a project goal. Non-professional project manager, they are only look towards the goal of the project, the deadline, the budget. They forget about their team members, their goals, their aims, they do not consider them. But professional project manager should professionally develop their team member. How? They have to make their people better. They have to improve their skills on both short term and long term. They have to improve their skills on the short term so that you, as a project manager, can benefit from this improvement on the short term. We mean in the current project. On the long term, the team members will have their skills be improved, so that they and you, if you have them or most of them in future projects, you will benefit from the professional development that you have invested in the previous project. So the professional development should be a main goal of the project. You can use during the professional development a tool that is called competency framework. The competency framework shows views and govern how the professional development of each team member. Okay, it is a tool that is called competency framework. If you view this competency framework, view and guide the professional development for each team member. Also, as a project manager, you have to lead your people. To lead your people, to be an example for your people, to set a standard for your people. What is the difference between leadership and management? Can one of them substitute the other? Is leadership is enough for a successful software project? Is management without leadership is enough for a successful software project? The answer is no. The professional project manager should couple between both leadership and management. Okay, what is the difference between leadership and project management? Between leadership and management. Management means that a power comes from authority. How? Your people, the team members, they are obligated to follow your direction. Why? Because you have power over them. You have an authority over them from your title, from your job title. They are obligated to follow your direction because you are a manager over them. This is management. Okay, what is leadership? Leadership differs actually. Leadership means that the ability for you or for a project manager to get extra commitment, tasks, work from your team member with no obligation. They are not obligated to give extra time, extra commitment, but because you are an example for them, because you are a leader for them, they see you when you have a task and you, for example, did not complete your task. You stay at your work until 6 p.m., 7 p.m., until all your work is done. Then they behave like you. They act as you. They are no more obligated to do extra time or to work extra time, but because you are a standard for them, because you're an example for them, because you are a leader, they will act as you. They will behave in the same manner as you behave. This is the difference between leadership and management. Both also differs from friendship. Friendship differs completely from leadership and management. Friendship, if it is utilized by the project manager in a good way, leadership and the management can be aided by friendship. The task of the manager, or the ability of the manager to manage and lead the good people or his people will be better because he has a good relationship with his team member. He has a friend relationship with his team member. So it facilitates the task, or being a manager, or being a leader. But if the project manager did not use the friendship in the right way, this will negatively reflect on the software project. Also, the project manager have to have the skills to manage the software process. The last lecture we said that the process, we defined the process. We said that the process is a sequence of steps, or a software process, a sequence of steps that aimed at delivering high quality software product on time and within budget. A project manager needs to select a process, implement and assess a software process. In order to select a process, a specific process for the project, there is two techniques: either to specify a software process or to tailor a software process. When you are working on a project and there is no process in your organization, there is no organizational process, or if your project is largely differs from the typical projects of the organization, then you have to specify your process. We mean by specify the process is to sketch out your process from scratch, is to sketch out a process specific for your project from scratch. Why? Because either there is no organizational process, or it may be there is an organizational process, but your new project differs largely from the typical projects of the organization. Then you have to specify. Otherwise, you have to tailor a software process. Sometimes your organization have an already existing software process, and your new project is similar to the typical projects of the organization. Then you have to adapt the already existing organizational process and modify it in order to best fit your new project. Then once the software process is selected, the project manager need to implement it, to execute it, to follow each step of the process. You have to stick to all steps of the process. If you, for example, as a project manager, skip any of the steps of your process, you give an indicator to your team members. You know, there is no problem from skipping parts of your process, which may lead to project failure if this step or this activity was a critical activity in the software project. While implementing the process and after implementing a process, you as a project manager, you have to assess, to evaluate the software process. How? You have to ask yourself questions about the process, about the proceed, or how the process proceeds, how the on schedule, or there is delay, have we used all the tools required, etc. In order to answer the questions we suggested during the assessment of the process, we have to collect data in order to answer the process assessment questions. These data are called measurements. If we want to define measurements, we can say they are quantifying attribute of a specific characteristic of a software project or process. For example, the quality is an attribute for a software product. How can we measure the quality? We can measure the quality by, for example, counting the number of bugs. Okay, the low or the minimum number of bugs indicates that our product is a high quality product. or it may indicate for a poor testing process. Okay, we have a product. We tested our product and we get a very low or very low number of bugs or defects. What does this mean? This means either one of two possibilities. Either our product is of high quality, or either the testing process was very poor, so that we could not identify any more bugs. Then also the project manager should have the skill or the required skills to manage the tools. You as a project manager, you have to use tools like any other type of a project. You have to use tools. Why? Because the tools, if the tool was efficient and good, the tools reflect positively on the project. It usually gives a product with high quality, and the development process would be more efficient. So we are more productive usual using the tools. Okay, but the problem is that we cannot buy all the required tools, because the tools are maybe costly, maybe need training for the team members, and we do not have time. But as much as you can buy a tool for your project, you have to, because if you did not, other competitors in the market will use, and their product will be probably more good, or more, the quality of their product will be more than the quality of your product, and their productivity will be better than your productivity. So as much as you can use tools during the design and the development of your software project, you have to. When you select a tool, okay, there is several commercial tool for any specific task in the software project. You have to select among these commercial tools. You have to consider the functionality of the tools, okay, number of features, for example, that the tool support, and the complexity, which is usually measured by the number of training days. When the tool is complex, it needs more training days for your team members. So it is measured, the complexity measured by the training days, and also the cost, the price for your tool. Usually there is a trade-off between these three criteria. Usually the tool which has the maximum functionality usually is the most expensive tool, and usually is the most complex tool. So there is a trade-off, and your role as a project manager, or your responsibility as a project manager, to decide upon the circumstances of your project which tool you have to select. Once you have selected the tool, you have to train your team members on the tool, because if you select a tool and buy for it, and your team members do not know how to use or to leverage the tool, then you spend your money and time on nothing, and this may lead to a project failure. Okay, so you have to train your team, and this training should be scheduled such as any other activity or basic activity of the project. Should be scheduled. The training time should be scheduled like any other activity of the project. Then once you have trained your team member, and you have spent time on the training and spent money on the cost of the training and the price of the tool, then you have to leverage the tool. Why? You have to stick to the tool. You have to use your tool to the maximum. You have to not to abandon to the tool because because your people are not familiar with it, or your people we have resistance towards these tools, or they like to work as they used to work. Okay, no, you have spent time, you have spent money, you have to use your tool. You have to make the best use of your tool. You have to leverage your tool. Also, you have all projects have needs, and these needs should be optimized. But some needs of a software project have contradictions or have trade-off. Okay, for example, features, resources, and time, all they are needs of a software project. Okay, it is important for the project to have more features and less resources and less time. But usually, when we need to increase the functionality or increase the features, we have to increase the resources or increase the time. When there is a problem in the resources or there is a decrease in the resources, we have either to increase the time to compensate, or to make requirements scrubbing in order to decrease the features. Also, when there is a problem in time, or when we have a schedule tight, okay, then we have to compensate either by increasing the resources or decreasing or scrubbing the features. Also, the quality and the productivity are both project needs. We need a high quality software product, and also we need to be more productive. But if you focus on quality activities such as reviews and testing, content review, and you review the review and test, and you test the test, you focus too much on the quality activities, this will decrease, of course, what? Productivity. Also, if you make your productivity a goal, a major goal, then this will harm quality. This will negatively affect on the quality of the software product. Another project needs which also have trade-off is the cultural decision and the technical decision. Sometimes the project manager needs to take a decision that is technically right, but culturally there is some concerns about it, like for example subtracting people. If this person is problematic in our project, you as a project manager, you should make subtracting this person as the last option. If nothing goes with this person, you have not to shy out this decision. Although it is culturally have some concerns, because he might has family, he might it might affect his employment history negatively. It may affect your, as a project manager, it may affect your ability to manage people. This means that you could not work, or you could not manage your people in an efficient way. Why you as a project manager? It is a stigma for a project manager to subtract someone from his team. This means that he could not manage him. Okay, but some people, what you do with them, they still problematic. So you do not shy away the decision of subtraction. Also, there is a trade-off between the cultural decision and the technical decision, but you have to balance. You have to.
Hanin, can you wrap up, please? Can you finish in less
Can
than
you what?
5 minutes, please? Yeah, can you
Finish?
try to finish? Yeah, finish it in less than 5 minutes. So just
Okay,
remaining slide,
okay.
please. Thank you.
Okay. Also, there is a trade-off between the working time and the meeting time. The meeting time is important in order to keep communication with the team member, and also the working time, but they affect each other also negatively. The last thing we want to talk about is the risk management. What is risk? Risk is an uncertain event that might happen or may not happen in the future. But if it happens, it would negatively affect the project outcome, and it usually leads to loss in time, money, or the quality of a software process. You, as a project manager, you have to identify risks from